299 Introduction. Welcome again, brothers and sisters. It is such a joy to have you as we study the Word of God together. We have seen from our previous study that Joshua sent in 2 spies from Shittim. But this time it was not to see if Israel could conquer the land, but to find the best way to enter it. Their entry into Jericho was exposed, but they were hidden by a prostitute named Rahab, who later was rescued along with her family because of a guarantee that the spies had given. This lady, we learned later, is in the genealogy of Jesus and remembered also for her faith in Hebrews chapter 11. The next thing we saw was a stunning miracle of the flooded waters of Jordan, rising up as a heap as the feet of the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant touched the water. This was a renewed display of what happened at the Red Sea. As the priests and the ark stood on the dry ground in the middle of Jordan, the people then passed over right against Jericho, a walled city of Canaanites. With that as our background for today, I warmly welcome you again to another episode of Thru the Bible.
Today we will be studying chapter 4 and 5 of Joshua. 12 men are appointed to take 12 stones out of the Jordan River, and 12 other stones are set up in the midst of the Jordan River as a memorial. The priests carrying the ark pass over the river, and the water of the river turns to its normal flow. God magnifies Joshua. Verse 1. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan from right where the priest stood, and to carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." This is something that they did, and here is what happened. Verse 8. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. The 12 stones taken out of Jordan and put on the west bank of the river were a reminder of God's tremendous power on Israel's behalf. Use all representatives possible when there is a celebration of victory. People have seen and have personally experienced victory. There is no potential danger of leading the people away from faith. All the people would like to be acknowledged when there is victory. Of course, when there is celebration. In the previous chapter, we noted Joshua choosing only 2 spies to spy out the land, and it was done secretly. Here we see Joshua publicly calling 12 people to construct the memorial of victory. A good lesson for us. Make sure everyone are represented and acknowledged when there is victory and celebration, but take only a few trusted ones when there is a crucial task at hand. Verse 9. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood. And they are there to this day. Verse 19. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground." If we carry the spiritual lesson out in this passage, our conclusion can only be that we are to teach our children the gospel. The business of parents is to give their children the gospel. There is no privilege like that of a parent leading his child to the saving knowledge of Christ. Verse 23 and 24. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. What God did for the children of Israel, He did for their benefit, your benefit, and mine. He did it that all the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is indeed mighty. This purpose was graphically fulfilled as soon as the Canaanites heard the news that the children of Israel had crossed over Jordan. Some of the important things to remember in this chapter are that the ark goes before and divides the Jordan River. It was not the rod of Moses. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But that doesn't mean that we can predict the manner in which He works. His person and character is the same, but the way or the method He performs is varied. The rod was used during the time of Moses. This time it was the ark. For us today, we don't need an external symbol of an ark. Our Emmanuel, God with us, He is with us. Therefore, we can pass through any impossible situation according to His word. His working in lives differs from person to person. Therefore, God's miraculous powers in our life does not necessarily mean that God would use the same method to deal with another person in Christ. God may do something totally different. Many times, some of us share our experiences with the intention of duplicating similar or same divine interventions in their lives so that they would be able to follow whatever we experienced. Dear friend, let us remember God is the same, but He works differently according to the times, situations, and personalities of people. The ark goes before, carried by priests. Christ goes before us through death, but also goes with us through this life. Jordan is typical of Christ's death, not ours. Chapter 5 now. In this chapter, we learn that the rite of circumcision was performed. The manna ceased, and they began to eat the old corn of the land. Finally, Joshua was confronted by the unseen captain of the host of the Lord. Joshua needed this vision at this time. These three things are important to see. Now, verse 1 of chapter 5. Now, when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. Because the Jordan River was at a flood stage, the Amorites and Canaanites did not expect the Israelites to cross over. They expected them to cross over after the flood season was over. They probably thought they had quite a bit more time to prepare for battle. And it was a rude shock for them to discover that God had enabled Israel to cross Jordan even when it was at a flood stage. Verse 2. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath Haraloth. Now this is why he did so. All those who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the desert on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the desert during the journey from Egypt had not. The new generation had neglected the rite of circumcision, which was the badge of the Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant, you remember, gave Israel the land of Canaan. They had neglected to observe this rite during those years of wandering through the wilderness. Verse 6, the Israelites had moved about in the desert 40 years until all the men who were of a military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land that He had solemnly promised their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So He raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." So the place has been called Gilgal to this day. Both in spirit and in reality, the children of Israel had not kept the rite of circumcision, which was the sign of the Abrahamic covenant. The children of Israel had walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the men of that age had come out of Egypt, who were men of war, had died. The Lord had given them children, and they are the ones whom Joshua is circumcising. At this time, God rolled away the reproach of Egypt. The reproach of Egypt means that during the latter years of the Egyptian bondage, this rite had been neglected, and the neglect had continued during the wilderness wanderings. Therefore, the place where Joshua circumcised the children of Israel was called Gilgal, which means a rolling. Verse 10. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. It was in the spring of the year, at the time of the latter rains, that Israel performed the rite of circumcision and then celebrated the Passover. The reproach of Egypt was rolled away from Israel. God had promised to give the descendants of Abraham the land, and the promise was about to become a reality. God works in and through us despite our weaknesses and failure to obey everything that He requires us to do. But when He graciously brings it to our attention, we better pay attention to what He is saying, even though it may be uncomfortable, painful, or even we find the timing unsuitable for us. Circumcision is painful. All of the Israelites knew too well how their own forefathers used this command to their advantage. In Genesis chapter 34, Shechem had defiled Dinah, Jacob and Leah's daughter. This enraged the brothers, and they deceitfully told Shechem and his father Hamor to have all the men circumcised so that Dinah, their sister, could be given in marriage to Shechem. This is recorded in Genesis chapter 34, verses 13 to 19. Now Shechem lost no time in getting all the males to be circumcised. Let's read Genesis chapter 34, verses 24 to 29. All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and put everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. The Israelites knew how this action would place them in a very vulnerable position should they be attacked. Gilgal was only a mile from Jericho, a powerful and a well-organized, well-protected city. They could have easily replied, "Why now? Let's take this step after there is peace. When we have the time, maybe a little later." It's a little too late when we are so close to enemy territory. We read that all Israelite men got circumcised. Now, has God been bringing to your notice some step of correction that you have to make? It may be a ruined relationship that needs to be restored, a person to forgive, the need to apologize, a letter or a card that you've got to send. Well, only you know something that God has been constantly bringing to your mind. Don't procrastinate. Don't push for a more suitable time. You see, the Israelites were in a very dangerous position, just a mile away from Jericho. They could have been destroyed, yet they chose to obey God. If God is calling you to take some drastic step of obedience, do it. Just do it. Just do it now. All of this has a spiritual message for us today. The old nature is no good. The old nature cannot inherit spiritual blessing. The old nature cannot even enjoy spiritual blessing. The old nature will not like Canaan nor anything in the heavenlies. In Galatians 5:17, Paul says, "For the flesh lusteth," which is literally wars against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. Paul found that there was no good in the old nature. He also discovered that there was no power in the new nature. The circumcision of the children of Israel recognized these facts. Verse 11. The day after the Passover, that very day they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the land. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that year they ate of the produce of Canaan. Manna was a picture of Christ, we are told in the New Testament. Jesus said, "Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world." Manna represents Christ in his death. He is the one who came down to this earth to give his life as a ransom for many. When Israel arrived in Canaan, the manna ceased, and they began to eat the old corn of the land. Here is something important for us. Don't expect manna from heaven when there is a harvest of grain in the fields. Some of us are calling out to God for experiences of feelings, when there are plenty of opportunities that we can make use of just across the street. Why, even just across the table in our own homes. Verse 13 to 15 of chapter 5. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied. "But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. This is the call and commission of Joshua. It is the same as Moses' call on the plain of Midian at the burning bush. Moses was told to remove his shoes, for the ground upon which he stood was holy. The children of Israel had crossed the Jordan River and were camped on the other side. One morning Joshua probably got up and looked over the scene. It was an impressive sight. There were the camps of all the 12 tribes of Israel around him. As he looked at it, I think he swelled with a little pride. Then he happened to look down at the edge of the camp, and he saw someone with a drawn sword. Joshua may have thought, "There is someone down there who doesn't seem to know that I am the general here. I'd better go down there and put that fellow in his place." So as he walked down there, and according to our translation said, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Who gave you an order to draw a sword?" Then that one, whom I believe was the pre-incarnate Christ, turned to him, and when he turned, he said, But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Notice the reaction of Joshua. He fell on his face before him. You see, Joshua learned that there was another headquarters, which was definitely higher than his own tent. There was a higher office he had to acknowledge, he had to obey. It was at the throne of God. Actually, Joshua was not captain of the hosts of the Lord. He was under someone else, and he would be taking orders from him. We shall be seeing this in the next chapter as he marches the army around the city of Jericho for 7 straight days. If you had stopped Joshua on the 6th day and said, "Look, General Joshua, this is a silly thing to be doing," he probably would have said, "That's exactly what I think." "Then why are you doing it? You are in command here." Joshua would say, "You are wrong. I take my orders from someone above me. I am only a foot soldier in the rear ranks. I am doing this because I have been commanded to do it." Dear friend, what is Christ, the commander-in-chief, telling you to do today? Do you recognize his lordship and authority? Do whatever he tells you to do. Even if you think the timing is not right, it may not sound sensible, but you need to obey God. Obedience is the only way to be safe. Trust and obey, for there is no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey.
Dear friends, it is wonderful to see good things happening to God's people. The rebellious of the 40 years are done away with, and God is reinforcing his claim on Israel by instructing them to get circumcised and sifting them from manna to the taste of corn from the promised land itself. And aren't it truly encouraging, dear friends, that the God of the universe and the captain of the host stood to defend and fight for his people? Here is the fact: after all, the captain of the ship never deserted them in the vast ocean to die. It was only a lack of faith and indifference that some among the Israelites thought so, that they have been abandoned and left to fend for themselves, and the sure end is a return to slavery or death. How many times have we ourselves thought likewise? How easily it is imaginable to the human mind that the immutable and unchangeable God could abandon his people. The devil continues to blind so many even today, and I pray that none of us will become his prey.